Well, I did when she had her hip replaced, so. Yeah.
Madam President, Commissioners, it is now 4:15.
All right, thank you very much, Director Wong. Welcome everyone to our work session this evening. We are going to start off with the 2022 Integrated 5-Year Work Plan Annual Report presentation by staff, and we welcome Mr. Tom Laws. Always good to see you, Tom.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Commission. Oh, look, okay. For the record, Tom Laws, Planning Supervisor with Ada County Highway. And today it's my pleasure to present the 2022 Integrated 5-Year Work Plan Annual Report. Just to kind of highlight the report, really what we do with this is look at the full complete streets network approach. It's divided into two sections. The first, looking at each individual mode, our roadways and intersections, our pedestrian network, our bicycle network, ADA, as well as transit. And then a second section that takes those and dives them into our specific neighborhood plans and kind of fleshes those out in those planning areas. Really an honest look of ACHD's progress. It's just the facts. It's the projects we've completed to date within our integrated 5-year work plan and the projects that we're committed to complete in the future. There's quite a bit of mapping that's involved with it as well, and with that, it helps identify those critical connections and key gaps throughout the county. And one thing that we've done with this historically is really relied on our advisory committees to help identify those metrics. And first plan in 2020 have taken those metrics and followed them through year by year. Historically, this plan is also, in this presentation, has really been the kickoff for the next integrated 5-year work plan. And just a reminder, in this year, we are taking a strategic pause to instead focus on that project prioritization methodology. However, that being said, we do plan to incorporate these findings and report not only into that project prioritization methodology, but then also into the draft budget process. So the Integrated 5-Year Work Plan Annual Report really touches on all aspects of the transportation network. As I mentioned, the bicycle, pedestrian, the ADA, the transit, and the roads and connections. And with that, it also takes in a variety of other factors, including our comprehensive maintenance strategy, that go in once philosophy to try to identify and complete all of the deficiencies at the same time. The level of traffic stress analysis for bicycles and pedestrians, as well as several different commission directives, including our bulb outs analysis and protected bike facilities, adding to any major arterial. Specifically talking about roads and intersections, there are a couple metrics that I wanted to highlight. The first is our commitment to unfunded congested corridors. And so within the CIP process, we've identified several areas across the valley that are congested. And since 2020, we've been slowly incorporating those into the integrated 5-year work plan. So just for example, in 2020, we had 21 identified congested projects that were not in the integrated 5-year work plan. They were unfunded. Last year, we brought that number down to 7. And this year in 2022, that's down to 14. And so we're slowly adding more and more of those unfunded projects into the program. Two other metrics that really stood out to me, one being with our traffic signals, our in-service rate has held strong at 99% over the last 3 years since we've monitoring it within the annual report. And then similarly, with our bridges, all the bridges, 99% of the bridges within Ada County have been either a good or very good rating since the 2020 first plan, and it held that since then. Jumping over to bicycle and pedestrians, I wanted to really highlight an example of success with our community programs. And the community programs effort really took off in 2008 when the vehicle registration fee ballot measure was approved. Since that time, we've estimated that roughly $50 million have been received to the district specifically for those community programs projects. And when we actually went back and crunched the numbers, ACHD has invested over $70 million in community programs since that 2008 ballot measure. What does that equate to? It's 142 safe routes to school projects have been completed since 2008, or more generally, 283 community programs projects. Another way to look at this is every year the district is completing 10 safe routes to school projects or 20 community programs projects, something I'm really proud to report. And here's just a map in green highlighting all of those projects. And as you can see, they're pretty well distributed all across the valley in our partner cities. So the first part of the plan really dives into individual mode and those specific metrics. And then, as I mentioned, the second part dives into our neighborhood planning areas and helps identify those projects within those planning areas. Our first neighborhood plan was complete in 2012, and that was the central bench plan. And at that time, the district made a commitment that we were going to go through every single planning area and create a neighborhood plan. And what that includes is really going out to the community, hearing from the residents what are those project needs that they've identified, and then committing to getting those built and adding them to the integrated 5-year work plan. I'm proud to stand here today and say that with the Barber Valley plan that's currently underway, we've committed to that promise and we'll have completed every single planning area neighborhood plan this year. What's really exciting though is in addition to that, we are actually revisiting the Central Bench neighborhood plan, and moving forward, we'll be revisiting all of our neighborhood planning areas with additional neighborhood plans. And from the planning side across the nation, you really don't see this happening. So often plans are created and put on a shelf. And what's so great about working for the district and being able to implement several of these projects is that not only are we committed to building the projects identified these in plans, but we're committed to go back and review these planning areas, review these plans, and see did we meet all those projects we said we were going to be doing? If not, where are those next ones that we need to incorporate? And then, have things changed? What are the new projects that we should be adding, incorporating in the future versions of the integrated 5-year work plan? When you break out those specific projects coming from those neighborhood plans, since 2012, we've identified 1,280 individual projects. And out of that, 311 have been complete. And one thing I just wanted to highlight, if you recall from the last slide, we've identified 283 community programs projects that have been complete, whereas this number is 311. And the reason that is because there's several additional projects identified in the neighborhood plans that are completed with different programs. And so, for example, you might have a multi-use pathway that's part of an arterial project with a capital project. It gets us that 311 number. In addition to those completed projects, though, we also have 321 that are actively in the adopted 2022-2026 integrated 5-year work plan. And so those projects are working through that process of concept studies, scoping of right-of-way acquisition. All being told, with 1,289 projects, roughly half of those either have been constructed or we're actively working on those to see them through to the finish line. To highlight a few upcoming steps, it's the intent to publish not only the PDF annual report that was provided in your packet, but also the online version later this week. On March 16th, I'll be back in front of the commission to provide an update to our project prioritization effort, and specifically the results of our existing methodology analysis with our stakeholder team and consultant. On April 5th, we have our second stakeholder meeting, and at that time, we'll be reviewing national best practices for prioritization across the country and forming draft recommendations that we'll then bring to you on next steps after that. And then ongoing, this year we plan to complete that revisit to the Central Bench neighborhood plan as well as the Barber Valley neighborhood plan, complete those corridor and concept studies that my team have presented to you over the past few weeks, and then also continue working towards the implementation of the livable streets performance measures, that holistic project strategy, and that really go in once philosophy, and then the other commission directives. And with that, I would like to just show you really quick what the interactive map is. It wasn't included in your packet. looks like it's working. Thank you. So as you can see, it really follows the same theme of the plan itself. What we've done is divided the PDF plan into different sections. So as you scroll down, you get to each one of those individual maps, as I mentioned, broken up by the individual modes. So here we have our commitment to building out our major roads, which ones have been completed in the work plan or plan for future. And then there's different tabs up top where you can scroll down and jump to the bike projects, our low stress bike network, our ADA completed projects with push buttons and ramps, our sidewalk gap project. And then one thing I really like is when you get down to the neighborhood planning areas, this real good is there. In addition to an interactive map that highlights each different planning area, you're able to click on one and actually get those specific metrics. So for example, with North Meridian Plan, here are all those individual metrics that we've tracked within the annual report, but then highlighted specifically for that neighborhood planning area. And you can do this with all those neighborhood planning areas to really see how the district is performing in terms of the roadways and intersections, towards the bikeways, towards the pedestrian features and so on. And so, as I mentioned, our intent is to post this by the end of the week, and I would encourage all of you to take a look at this as well as the PDF version, and please reach out to me if you have any questions or comments. And with that concludes my presentation, and I'll stand for any questions.
Tom, thank you so much. We've gotten so many positive comments and feedback on the interactive aspect of the map, how they can just zero in, they don't have to go through the whole report and guess, and so kudos to you and your team. You've really done a great job, so thank you very much. Commissioners, any comments, questions? Mr. Hanson.
President May and Tom, I appreciate this very much. The map I've been sending people to is the integrated 5-year work plans. It's a fantastic map. Is this going to be overlaid into it, or is this separate from? Is there a way they're linked together? How does that work?
At the time, this is separate. It's really following the same as last year, but I love that idea. We are constantly looking at different ways and with the planning team to make these more visually user-friendly and incorporating different ideas.
Good. A good business will do, after they do a change, they'll do an analysis of whether, in fact, what they did achieved the goals that they set out to do, and that will then inform, the next project and the next project. So what kind of analysis are you going to be doing in some of these neighborhoods to find out whether, in fact, some of these projects actually achieve the goals? How are they being used? Do people feel safer? Are people investing more? One of the things, just driving over here, I happened to be driving on Emerald, and it struck me driving over that when we transitioned that road to what it is now, Emerald, by the cemetery all the way up to Orchard, we had all kinds of people were concerned about what that would do. Well, there's yet another apartment complex or something called the Roosevelt that's planned there. So clearly that's had a positive impact on the economic investment along that corridor. So, the investments, the safety, do we do any of that analysis? Is that part of what we're going to go into the bench? I'd love to know sort of how people are using the Cascia bikeway. Do they feel safer? How is it being used? Has it achieved the goals? Or are some of the problems that they identified before still there? And we didn't quite get it right, at least in some segments.
Absolutely, Madam President and Commissioner Hanson. I'll speak specifically to the central bench plan, as to that's really the first one we're doing this revisit. And with that plan, we are intending to not only look at that original project list and identify which ones had been completed and which ones are next in that hopper, but taking a closer look at the crash data of the neighborhood, at the level of traffic stress and level of service for bikes, peds, and vehicles, to see how that's changed since the plan. Not directly related to the planning effort, but we are working closely with Compass to get bicycle and pedestrian counts at several key locations, including the Cascia Bridge that you mentioned, to kind of start getting those before and after counts as we install more and more of these projects.
Yeah, when I would suggest just going and observing. There's nothing, there's nothing better than just actually being there in the observing and asking questions, and being, you know, a humble observer of what the dynamic is. And hopefully we had that sort of observation before we went in there so that we could do some comparative analysis. That's really critical. And I think it really has to inform what works and what doesn't. We're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to do things thinking we're going to be benefiting a neighborhood, and it may maybe not meet their expectations. We need to know that.
Thank you, Tom, and I think that speaks to why you're going back into the central bench and you're doing that touchback to figure those things out. So thank you very much for your presentation today. We appreciate it. So no more questions? Oh, quick question, and then we'll move on to the budget.
Yeah, Tom, do you mind going back to slide 5? For coming in late, I had another meeting.
We're glad you're here.
So just to clarify, I wasn't sure exactly, with the numbers there, neighborhood investment slide. Yep, that one. So are you, if I understand the completed number, I understand the identified number, 321 5-year work plan. So that would then put us like at half, right? I just want to make sure that that's the consensus, that we would be almost halfway through the identified projects across this entire county. Is that correct?
Madam President, Commissioner Pickering, that is absolutely correct. I would say that it is a moving target. Every year we're adding more projects to that list. I think we added probably close to maybe 200 projects this last year, South Meridian and HUNA plans. And so, you know, that 1,200 number is just going to continue to grow. But yes, today we've completed about 50%, or our programmed about 50%.
Program, yeah, that's great. That's really exciting. And to build on Commissioner Hansen's point about the central bench piece, because obviously that's my district, was the Boise Central Bench plan, did that just have some outdated and lacked some of the data plans? And so are we going to be because you mentioned crash data, those pieces, so are we getting it up enough, or is it part of just kind of that regular, you know, routine, we evaluate these other, kind of switch gears to other ones? Kind of, can you give me some more context for why we're going into these ones in particular?
Yes, Madam President and Commissioner Pickering, it's a combination of both. So
okay.
The level of traffic stress is a good example where, you know, in the early days of the plans, we weren't looking at that. So moving forward, that is an item that will be included in every single plan. And so I'm viewing it more as the first chapter of the plan is really going to be the revisit, and it's going to look at the original plan, the commitments we've made, and then how we've done to, you know, holding those promises. And then the other chapters are really going to align similar with what we have today: updated demographics, updated traffic counts, and things. One addition, though, is that you know, in the past, these plans have really relied heavily on they've been bicycle and pedestrian plans, and we're really moving towards more transportation plans. So looking at those first last mile, incorporating of the major arterial projects as well. We really saw that as some of the biggest needs when you went out to CUNA, went out South Meridian with those, you know, pathway requests is joining those with the major arterials as well. And so we're really looking at making these neighborhood plans much more holistic and including all the different modes.
Tom, I'm just really impressed, like really, really impressed. You're doing you and the team are doing an amazing job. And and I also want to say just the aesthetics of this presentation and the map itself were just, you know, you're getting it out of the park. It's just beautiful. I love seeing it. Everything looks great. And also just on the map itself, is that public already or is it not? I wasn't quite sure. The 2020 annual report, the green that you pulled up with all the different.
Our goal is to make it live after this meeting. So
perfect.
We'll have it by Friday.
That's so exciting.
That's time.
Great work.
Yeah, very good. Thank you so much, Tom. We appreciate it. All right, Mr. Daigle. All right, before we start, I just want to say thank you so much to you and the team for really, I think you honed in on the objective and the work that went into this presentation. I think we're hitting the mark, and really appreciate, like I say, all the efforts that went into it, and looking forward to the presentation tonight. And welcome to all the department heads that are here to share some information. To remind the commission, this is an information and an overview for us. There's a slide at the end of each section. So if you have some questions, if you could hold them till then, that would be appreciated. So, Mr. Daigle.
Take all the credit, but it goes to the team. So.
Yes, absolutely.
Madam President, Commissioners, for the record, Paul Daigle, Chief of Staff. Welcome to the first of many budget briefings for fiscal year 23. We're leading off with the administration division. Next slide, please. For planning purposes, administration has 55 people spread out among these 6 departments. Some of the departments are run by deputy directors, others are run by managers, but you'll hear from each of them this afternoon. Next slide, Ken. So as you can see, our fiscal year 21 budget, a little over $12 million. We hit 95% of that. We spent 95% of that. The deputy directors and the managers will go into a little more detail about some of the hits and misses. Some of the departments were over, some of them were under, averaged out to about 95%, which is well over the 92% that the commission has asked us to do. Now, you'll see that for the year, fiscal year 23, we're looking at about a $13.5 million budget. There's some planning factors that we needed to assume going into setting up this budget. Number one, we planned for about a 5% increase, which represents 3% plus new construction, which is a standard planning factor for all our budget years. The other assumptions that we made were that we would have a 10% increase in our medical premium. Last 4 years, we haven't had any increase whatsoever. So we've already been warned that we'll probably get an increase. So we're planning on a 10% increase in medical, 5% increase in dental. And for the time being, I've planned for a 3% cost of living increase for the workforce. Now, because we've started this so early in the year, usually it's a little bit later in the year, we're not going to get good hard numbers on medical and dental till about the June-July timeframe. So those numbers may need to be adjusted up if we experience a little greater increases. At that point in time, too, we'll have a little better idea of what the Fed's doing, getting a handle on inflation, and so that'll temper what we suggest for a final cost of living. So, next slide. With that, unless there's any questions for the overarching discussion, I'd like to turn it over to your treasurer, my manager, for the administration division, Sherwin Pesca, who will go into detail about the administration portion of the budget.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Daigle. Welcome, Sherwin.
Thank you very much. First of all, the first department that we're talking about in the administration division is actually the administration department. So next slide, Ken. So the administration department, out of the 55 employees in the division, 13 of them are in the administration department, spread across 5 sections, which includes chief of staff, finance, accounting, budgeting, and procurement and contracting. And these are the beautiful people that work in my department. And I'm sure you recognize some of those folks already.
Hardworking folks.
Yes,
Yeah.
hardworking folks. Okay, so just a quick overview of the department. As far as what each of the sections are responsible for. So this is just some of the most common responsibilities, including finance, management of the cash flows and investments, obtaining insurances, equipment leasing, in accounting, responsible for financial reporting, processing of payroll. This week is obviously a payroll week, so it's a big week. Processing accounts payable, collection of funds, audits, that's a big one. In budget, development, tracking, and this evening, adjustments of budgets. And then in procurement and contracting, they're responsible for bidding and contracting. Next slide. So the budget for administration is $2.1 million. So as you can see, the budget increases ever slightly each year by about $100,000 each year. And most of that is in the salaries and wages. And A small portion is due to increases of service costs, insurances, audit services, and so forth. Okay, next. Okay, this is the budget highlight. 2/3 of the budget for administration is spent on salaries and benefits. And then the remaining 1/3 is on other expenses, which consists of just a few items here: $200,000 annually for commuterized support, $182,000 for insurance and bonding, $150,000 approximately for self-insurance claims, and so forth. Initiatives. So the top initiative for the administration department at the moment is hiring an accounting supervisor, which was left vacant just this past week by Anna Osborne. Another initiative is implementation of a GASB statement. This particular one is on leases. Next one is we're focusing on an RFP for banking services this year. And then next year, we're looking to add 2 more employees to the accounting department. The implementation of a new budget software, and then adding temporary help for procurement and contracting. So those are our top initiatives.
Thank you, Sherwin.
And
So
I stand for any questions.
the temporary help and procurement is that you're just gonna have a temp come in? Is that like
Yes.
part-time? So 0.5? Okay.
We have an individual that serves in the military, so it's just to help out during those time periods where that person is serving.
Okay, and then the projection is three new hires?
Yes.
Okay, super, thank you.
Any
Commissioner, any
questions?
questions or comments?
Madam President, I have a question.
Commissioner McKinney?
Sherwin, could you back up, let's see, previous to that? Okay, under other expenses, we have 200K commuter ride support. Now, if you go back to the previous slide, commuter ride has a separate line on this table. Help me
Yes.
understand the distinction between those two.
Yeah, so each year, the $200,000 goes towards supporting commuter ride for, accomplishing their mission. So it goes towards covering some of their salaries. The total budget for commuter ride is, Tessa is going to be talking to this here, is about $2 million. So only 40% comes from user fees. The remainder has to come from federal aid, and then a small portion comes from the assistance of ACHD.
Well, and I guess my question is, why is this 200K here and not lumped in with the other 2 million that's on the other line?
It's an expense of the administration department, so it goes in as a revenue for a commuter ride.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it because the $2 million line number on commuter ride is paid in a different way?
Yes, correct.
And this 200K is what comes out of our pocket?
Exactly.
And the rest of it is what gets reimbursed? Is that
Exactly.
right?
So
Okay.
commuter ride is a separate fund, whereas the rest of the agency is a general fund. So we have to do an actual fund transfer to commuter ride.
Okay,
So it's treated a little bit differently.
great, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Quick
Any other
question-
questions, Commissioner
Quick
Hanson?
question on the two, for accounting, tell me
Yes.
about that, and, what is our risk, our exposure by not having those?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Commissioner. So I started 16 years ago here at the district. I was the last additional FTE to the administration department. So at that time, the budget was $75 million. And as you know, with tonight's budget adjustment, it's gonna go above $150 million. So we're still operating with the same amount of FTEs over the years. So there's been a lot of improvements and efficiencies made, but the staff is fully stretched. And if we continue increasing the budget, there's gonna be a breaking point. And I'd rather fill a position than having a payroll where an employee doesn't get paid.
So it's a sheer matter of size of the budget, not that,
Volume.
that we are dealing, for example, funding sources are complicated, federal audits, or
Also that, Commissioner.
there's more things we have to
Yes.
be accountable to.
Yes, correct. So it's not just the double of the budget, but also the volume of transactions we're processing, the complexity of the transactions. For instance, we're implementing GASB 87 on leases. Those are new standards that requires a lot of time and investment to determine what the requirements are and implementing those in our financial statements. And as far as the volume is concerned, so in 16 years ago, the processing of invoices has increased to now this day to about, about 8,000 transactions per year just on accounts payable. For payroll, we've gone from 275 employees to almost 400 employees. That's almost 10,000 payroll checks issued throughout the year. And there's only one person that handles each of those functions.
So, a request coming in and passed for additional accounting, even for one, so.
This has been discussed, and, you know, it's been discussed internally, and we've been looking at ways to continue to make efficiency improvements. But technology can only take us so far. We can't put a robot to take care of payroll. So unfortunately, it's about time to have this discussion.
We appreciate that, Sherwin.
Sure.
Another question,
Yes,
and then we'll keep
Madam
going.
President, Sherwin, what you're saying is that you run one of the most friendly sweatshops I've ever heard of. And it's
Yes,
appreciated.
but we have good benefits.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
Oh, all right.
All right.
Thank you very much,
Okay,
Sherwin.
thank you very much.
All right, next, we have HR Department. Sherry, welcome. Always good to see you too.
President May, Commissioners, thank you for giving us an opportunity to go through our budget with you this afternoon. As I said, I represent the HR department. If you want to go to the next slide, please, Ken. Our team has six members. Dean and Don, who are on the end there, primarily handle safety and training issues. Jen and Laurel handle most of the HR issues along with myself. And Lacey, who is right next to me, keeps us all going in the same direction. So, and then just kind of a breakdown of our department. From the HR perspective, we are handling primarily benefits administration, compensation, job classifications, recruitment, which has been a very big task over the last year, and onboarding. Performance management, that's employee evaluations and feedbacks. Compliance, that is everything from different types of training to other standards to ensure that we're meeting those safety related and other employment related standards. Employee relations, and we added COVID. While that isn't something that's been typical for the past 2 years, it has certainly dominated a significant portion of our time. Moving on to safety, again, we're focusing in workers' compensation administration here. Of course, injury and accident prevention, along with also safety or compliance issues as it relates to safety. And then lastly, training. They really are involved in the development and coordination of all employee training, professional development, and again, those kinds of compliance-related training. For example, respectful workplace training and those types of trainings that are really focused on the compliance side. Ken? Our budget in 2021 was just over $1 million. We did execute 97% of our budget, and consistent with the other departments, there you will see a slight increase as we went into 22 and 23. The proposals for 23, really, as you'll see later in the presentation, is salaries, benefits, the addition of a possible new position, as well as our employee retention program. Again, some of the budget highlights, about 58% of our budget is on salaries and benefits, with 42% being other expenses. These other expenses are really primarily services to the employees of the district. For example, the awards and incentives programs, this encompasses our retention program. Our quarterly awards programs are included here. Our professional services, these will go to cover our consulting services for benefits, our drug testing program, any other consulting fees that we may have will also be a part of this category. Advertising, again, that's been a big source in the past year, so that is all of our recruitment advertising. Safety and first aid, this really goes along with the presentation we gave a few weeks ago in terms of the recoveries or the savings in workers' comp dollars. But we're spending about $41,000 in that area, focusing on our safety incentive program and materials needed for safety training. And then the employee training, that $17,000 is not just for HR staff. That also includes group training that is being done for employees throughout the district. So some of our initiatives for FY22 and FY23, really we want to return to employee-focused programs. So returning to in-person training. We've continued to train over the past 2 years through COVID, but primarily through virtual training programs, which has been a great alternative, but it doesn't beat the in-person trainings. So we really want to get back to some of those types of trainings. One of the first things on our bucket list is respectful workplace training. And again, that's something that's best achieved in person. Professional development for our team, as well as a return to our leadership ACHD program. We also want to return to our full health and wellness fairs. We've been able to continue those over the past 2 years, but we have modified them to make sure that we are maintaining safety standards with COVID. What's been missing is all of our health and wellness vendors. And so we're excited to hopefully bring those back in the upcoming year. Again, re-energizing the wellness program. One of the things that we've always done following our health fair is an in-person meeting of knowing your numbers, so that people had an opportunity to meet with representatives from St. Alphonsus to understand their results from the health fair. So we hope to return to those in-person meetings. We're also looking at some different gym options. We've heard from our team members that they'd like to have some different options rather than the 2 that we currently have. So we're looking for some different alternatives there. We'll also be looking to implement salary survey results. We're in the process right now of conducting a full salary survey. Those results will be coming to you shortly, and then hopefully we'll be able to implement those results. We are also in the process of reviewing a possible new HRIS software. And this software, we're looking for something that will help us to streamline some processes that are in place. And for our applicants, for the applicant-facing employment applications, be a little more user-friendly and more intuitive for those that are wanting to come to work at the district. And then finally, in reference to some staffing recommendations, you've heard about our intern to hire program. One of the elements of this that will be recommending is to be able to add 4 FTEs that are designed to help transition our interns from a temporary intern position into a full-time employee with the district. These would be temporary placeholders, And then as new positions or as regular positions become available, they can then compete for those positions. But this would be that opportunity for them to transition into a full-time district employee. And then finally, the addition of an additional HR generalist or safety floater. The industry standards for HR staffing is typically 1 staff member for every 100 FTEs. So we are a little bit below that. We've been able to get to where we are today through utilizing Dean and Dawn to help us with some of the HR functions. And by having that additional position, that will allow us to more have the HR team focused more on those HR duties. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Sherry. I would like to visit, we don't have to do that this evening, but I would like to visit with you a little bit more on the salary survey that you're doing regarding the implementation, how the next steps going forward. So I'll email you, maybe we can set aside a time to do that.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you very much, Sherry. Commissioners, any questions or comments?
Just want to say, great job.
I appreciate it very much. What I appreciate, there have been a number of times over the last 2 years that you've come and told us the implications of the change, the hybrid work conditions on HR. And what I'd love to know is, first, as Recovery Act funds, we didn't get a whole lot, are gone. I'm not sure how they're reflected in the budget. So it's kind of a general question to everybody. Tell me how that's going to be reflected in the budget, because I don't budget for those for next year. But also, how has the way in which we've developed the budget been influenced by what we've learned? We've incorporated some new efficiencies and said, you know what, this is actually working. Let's incorporate this in the way in which we've worked with employees in a hybrid situation. And that would be really helpful to know, rather than just assume back. I think everybody's understood these last 2 years we've learned a lot, and then how that's reflected in the budget.
So that's a good question. Some of the financial implications of the COVID recovery money, I will defer to Sherwin on how that was reflected in the budget. But I think we've learned a lot from the hybrid work, both things that work well and things that don't work well. And I think the biggest key has really been communication and making sure that that has been maintained, whether we're in a virtual workplace or we're in an in-person workplace. I think that the going to the 2 days a week has worked because that face-to-face interaction for certain types of activities is just irreplaceable. And so I think just finding that balance. In terms of how that has reflected in the budget, I mean, I think we have found, as it relates to training, there are some types of training that can be done very effectively virtually. And I think we've found ways to utilize that in more situations than perhaps we did in the past. So I think we have seen some savings from that perspective. But again, there are other types of training that we really need to have that face-to-face interaction. And so those, we do hope to go back to what we were doing before.
Well, I just appreciate, I don't think we could have gotten through the last 2 years. I think a level of confidence all 5 of us have felt, knowing that you have been in charge of HR and the whole process of working with employees throughout the whole system. And I really, really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, certainly do. You had a few pivots there going through COVID, learned a lot, but it really, overall, it was just seamless. So thank you very much to you and your team for that. Commissioner McKinney.
Yes, Madam President, thank you. Sherry, could we go back one slide? I just wanted to ask a question about the staffing for intern to hire program.
Yes.
Just to make sure I understand clearly what we're talking about. Those additional 4 full-time employees. Explain to me again how that works, because I'm not exactly certain what. Got an intern for hire program where we bring on interns, and the hope is to bring them on as full-time employees.
Correct.
Eventually. Is that what these 4 spots are? 4 spots that are being for interns to move in, or are these additional employees that will help transition the intern into full-time? That's where I'm confused.
There are additional FTEs that will add the interns onto our payroll. Right now, our interns are payrolled through a temporary agency, so they are not included in our FTE
Okay,
numbers.
so those are the spots for the interns to take.
That is.
All right.
Now, these are intended to be transitional FTEs, because ultimately, we would want those interns to be able to transition into a regular position, which would then free up the transitional FTE for another intern to move into.
Okay.
It really relates to timing. Sometimes when someone graduates and they're ready to move into a full-time position, if we don't have a position available at that point, they're going to look elsewhere. And these positions provide that transition to allow them to get onto our payroll as a regular employee, and then within a specified period of time, that gives it a larger window for a regular position to become available.
Are these 4 positions to be considered positions in the HR department itself, or not?
Great question. They would not be in the HR department. They would be one for each of the divisions. So there would be one assigned, and then if we have interns that, if the deputies would like to move those around, if we have more interns in one area than another, then we can certainly do that. But it's intended to have one FTE in each division.
Okay, all right, great, thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you very much. Mr. Price, welcome.
Thank you, Madam President, Commissioners. For the record, Steve Price, General Counsel, representing the legal department today. As you know, the legal department has 4 people on those 4 positions. We don't have pictures because we're the secret weapon and we don't want those people identified.
The stealth squad.
In terms of the department overview, we do handle all the tort claims, restitutions. Now, the restitutions is when somebody's out, they crash into our traffic equipment or poles or anything, they will typically get a citation and the court system, or we go after that money and make the person who did the damage repay the district for the damage they caused to district assets. We also handle all the public records requests. We make legislative recommendation. We do litigation management, and we support the procurement often. This is the budgets historic last year. You'll notice we're a little over this year, $30,000. That relates to a continuation of MIG, the ADA compliance. All that effort was the legal budget. For reasons, and just because it was a compliance document, we needed to make it attorney-client privilege, and so the legal department handled that project. And also related to that was all the litigation related to Garden City came directly out of that budget. Next year, I didn't have much say in terms of what the budget is. I think the legal budget's fairly fluid. Historically, we guess at a number. We don't know how much conflict we're going to have or how much exposure liability-wise. Over the last 10 years, I had Christine pull it up. The legal department, we typically miss our budget under significantly. And kind of a rough estimate, in the last 10 years, we underspent what budgeted by about $1 million. So a lot of years is 50,000, some years is 400,000, a few years. So we make those annual budget adjustments. Whenever we get about halfway, we'll make a budget adjustment and give some of that money back. The idea is one department you don't want to spend money is the legal department, and we try our best through efficiencies and legal advice to avoid litigation. And so that's, this year I suspect that number, you go back and I suspect that this number, we won't have MIG as heavily involved, and hopefully the Garden City will run its course, resolve soon. And so that'll be an opportunity to save some costs. Next slide, Ken, thanks. Our budget categories, about 61% of salary and benefits. Lawyers are expensive, and 39% go to other expenses. Of that, about 400,000, I think that's wrong. 50,000 is for professional services, and 350,000 is for legal fees. That's not insurance and bonds. I don't know how that got changed, but anyway, next slide. Our initiatives is the ADA compliance report. You're familiar with that. This year we'll be working internally as well with Meg to implement all the recommendations that you adopted. Develop a snow removal policy, which you're all very well. Develop a sewer lid policy. That's been a dispute with a bunch of the sewer companies as to who pays when we go in and do a project, who pays for the relocation of those sewer lids. Also, remember the dig once legislation. Well, we opted out of that and will prefer to develop our own ordinance on trench and dig once ordinance. And that's something that's going to be supporting the fiber industry, as well as the current litigation. The big litigation we have is ACHD versus Garden City. Right now, we have about 6 active tort claims, which is pretty low. And what I mean by claim is we actually have some form of litigation going on. Those typically resolve through the process. And a lot of times people, when they file the claim, they don't understand the legal issues, and when they find out that they don't have a legal basis for the claim. So a lot of those we don't end up paying. It's just because they get a hungry lawyer that goes out there and files a claim, and then they sue us, and then figure out that we don't have any responsibility. And that really relates to the law under the Idaho Tort Claim Act. When a public entity is liable, what they're liable for. We probably have 22 tort claims that have been filed. Of those tort claims, I'll bet you 10 will just disappear. And we don't do anything. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you very much, Steve. Commissioners, any comments or questions? Commissioner Hanson?
Aaron, Steve, thanks. I appreciate this very much. What I really appreciate about your department is your willingness to help us get our heads around policy and understanding, we have to be the ones that develop and formulate policy. We've got some new ones on the snow removal and the sewer lid and the dig ones. And we've got some old ones that each of us believes need to be done. And I think I really would like to see more resources in your department, another FTE or something to help us go through that process, because what it does is it pulls resources, time, and energy from the other departments who are busy implementing the existing policies. And so it's very difficult for us to figure out how to move forward. I mean, they can advise, but we don't have to take all their time and resources as we try and figure out to represent our constituents what the best policy is. I'd actually like to see this expanded with another FTE and make it clear that this is about legal and policy development through the legal department, because that's what you do. It's more than just legal or providing legal advice to the commission. Help us formulate policy. So I'd really like to see part of our budget find this as a perhaps another FTE, and you and I can talk. What would that look like, I think that's what I'd like to put on the agenda for this department.
Okay, well, thank you, Madam President, Commissioner Hanson. Well, I was hoping that you would all applaud that I'm probably the only one that isn't asking for additional FTE, but I'm glad you're recommending it.
I did notice that. I did note that here.
And we're pretty proud that really since 2002, there was 1 lawyer, and then there was 2 lawyers 5 years later, and then we got 3 lawyers. We've been able to handle a lot of the work that the district does in a very proactive practice, as you know. The commission in the past has really pushed us in the policy development. I'm happy to expand the legal department to be much more involved. I think I've told you in the past, the legal department does about 10% of our time is dedicated to the commission and policy development. And if you would like to see greater emphasis on that, happy to do it. The times that we have kind of gone in that direction that's been beyond our capabilities, I've used outside counsel, which has been effective. It gives us a much broader look when we do that. We do a lot more research about what other communities are doing across the United States. You know, no need to reinvent the wheel. Let's figure out what's out there and then try and adapt to that. But absolutely, you want to get into policy development. It's most certainly we have the capability, and we can try it without an FTE for a while. And if it looks like we're going to need it, then we can do that. Happy to do that.
I think that'd be good. We're not here to make any big decisions this evening on that, but I think we can have an expanded conversation on that, and you can assess your needs and what you're capable of doing, and then you come back to us and we can go from there.
And I'll just say that I don't know that it needs to be a lawyer. A policy said could be a legal assistant, a paralegal, somebody who can work with the 3 lawyers in the office. It doesn't necessarily.
That's for your board.
But thank you, Steve.
You bet.
We appreciate all you do.
Madam President.
Commissioner Pickering.
Steve, I just want to say thanks for the forward look of the items that you guys are going to be working on. That's really helpful. And I assume there's, you know, we don't know what else is on the horizon, but there's, I'm sure it's going to grow. But thank you for that. It gives some context to the work that you're doing.
You're welcome. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, the one thing about the legal department is that these policy issues, the commission, they raise those and they become a bigger issue. And when they then we try and tackle them. You know, the fiber agreements we've had to deal with in the past and things like that. So as those issues come before the commission, and it looks like that the best way to do it is to implement some form of ordinance or resolution or adopt a policy, then we do that. And so I am sure that is a very short list of what will have occurred by 2023.
I agree. Thank you very much. All right, next we have Communications Department. Sandy Lamb. There she is. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, President May, Commissioners. Happy to be here. For the record, Shandy Lamb, Communications Department Deputy Director. Okay, so, do you want me to do this? Oh, now we both did it. We have 7 full-time employees and 1 intern in the Communications Department. So going across, Erin, Christy, Rachel, Emma, Avery, Carrie, Delaney, and myself. So Delaney is our new intern. The rest you've probably met. And what we handle in the department is public input, so all of those public meetings where we request feedback on projects, open houses, surveys, public education, helping the community understand what it is that we do, why we do it the way that we do it, how we do it. Public relations, help them understand who we are as an agency, and helping them to also feel what it is that we're portraying, that we're doing things to be accurate, that we focus on safety, those types of issues. Media relations, both proactive and reactive. We handle all media relations, branding. So when somebody sees our logo, what is it that they think? Understanding that it's accurate, it's timely, etc. And then all marketing for all of our programs, our projects, etc. So the communication budget, you will see here, is just breaking the $1 million mark in 2023. In 2021, we spent 88% of our budget, and that variance is mostly attributed to the fact that we did have 4 open positions for a while, but we are fully staffed now and full steam ahead, so I don't expect that to be the case moving forward. Slight increases, and majority of that is salary. So for 22 and 23, the budget is very similar, difference in 1%. So 77% of our budget goes to salaries and benefits, while 23% goes to other expenses. Those other expenses include our postage, our printing, our Facebook boosts for advertising, rentals of spaces, tents, everything like that we need for public outreach meetings. Supplies, we do our general office supplies, our clothing, professional development, travel and meetings, pretty self-explanatory. Professional services, this can be anything from, we have a photographer that will go out and take before and after pictures of our projects. This would also be where the survey is that you guys are re-implementing for this fiscal year. That would be in our professional services budget. So our initiatives, hang tight with me, we've got lofty goals. So for 2022 and 2023, we'd like to further increase the district visibility. That's continuing with proactive media outreach, blogs, videos, HOA meetings, neighborhood association meetings, business associations, being out in the community at things like Rotary or HOA. We were recently at the Boise Metro Chamber Transportation Committee meeting, speaking there. So really focusing on getting and being in those types of meetings so that they can put faces to ACHD and ask their questions and get answers from real human beings. Increased visibility of commission members. So we're starting to do that. Commissioner Goldthorpe, thank you so much for going live with us. Commissioner May, we have you scheduled to go live this month, and we're actually going to be talking about budget. So we will be hopefully doing that with all of you, but getting all the information out there as to what it is. Additionally, that can be through quoting you and press releases and things along those lines, just increase that visibility. We plan to host 23 to 25 virtual or in-person public involvement events per year. Increase design focus, comment, public involvement, which we've already started. Increase web-based public involvement efforts. Increase public engagement specific to maintenance operations. Let's see. Attend community events to represent ACHD, provide information and answer questions. Develop generic media kits to assist businesses impacted by ACHD road improvements, helping them to understand how to work through those struggles when we're doing work in their area. Connecting with businesses through programs and organizations like Rotary, Coffee with the Mayor, town halls. Continue to increase consistent social media presence. Develop strong relationships with partner agencies and organizations. So we'll be hosting the Communications Connection meeting that we talked about before that will have all of the cities and counties communications folks invited to it. Build upon strong relationships with local media. So we'll also be hosting a meet. Rachel's back from leave, and that will just be building upon those relationships, helping them to understand who to call, how our media process works. And then these are on their own slide because they're not included in the budget. You guys will see me back in front of you again as we know more. But our biggest initiatives are to begin a rebranding and to begin our website revamp in conjunction with IT. And with that, I will stand with for any questions.
Thank you, Shandy. I appreciate that. The website revamp in conjunction with IT, the cost, is that a split in the budget? You're going to have some of it in your budget line in IT, or how does that work?
I think it probably depends on what solution we go with, but I think it will likely come out of Andy's budget in IT. But some of what we're looking at has multiple solutions, not just what you would consider a website. So right now we use things like My Emma, which is an email tool. Some of them have that included with them. So really we're looking at like one-stop shop systems, and then we'll have to look at what it provides and go from there. But majority of that will be out of IT.
More to come during the budget process. I want to say that I'm so glad that you're getting out in the community and attending these events and the outreach that you're doing. I would like to see, like once a month, if you could come back and just kind of give us an update as to what you've done and what feedback you're getting, and just kind of touch base with us as to what's on the minds of people that are out there, and just kind of your temperature. So if we could maybe do that once a month, that would be great. Commissioners, any other questions or comments? Green?
Thank you. Shandy, yes, I'm so excited. You're doing an amazing, you and your team are doing an amazing job. I wanted to ask a question about you coming in with some fresh eyes in the middle of the pandemic. Obviously, all of our different departments and teams have had to adjust from pre-pandemic life to current pandemic life. As it relates to community engagement. What are some really big takeaways that you're seeing where, you know, we need to obviously adapt in how we engage our community members, but what are specific things that you've noticed that people are engaging more on, or ways that, you know, what are things that you're doing that you're seeing it, you know, provide dividends to us, or what are avenues you want to explore to widen that?
Sure. President May, Commissioner Pickering. So really what we've seen is that the community likes virtual. I think it's just easier for the mom of four that would love to give us feedback on a project but doesn't want to load up all the kids and head to the open house. We've actually seen really good numbers on public input. We just had record-breaking numbers. I think it was the South facility that we had our highest numbers for public input so far. So we are seeing that something that initially was an, oh my gosh, we are shifting everything 180 degrees. I wasn't here for that part, but I know that feeling actually turned out to be really beneficial. So as the pandemic dies down, I do think that we will look at doing in-person events again, but having a more hybrid approach, because we can't ignore the numbers and stray away from that. And my team is also really dedicated to finding new ways to reach the underserved communities. ADA compliance, that's one of the big things that we're talking about with website and rebranding, different languages, everything along those lines, to just make sure that we're reaching everybody and that nobody's left out of that equation at all for any reason.
Thank you, Shandy. I think that's really, really exciting. And as you guys know, I've talked about it before, but I'm just really, really tickled about your progress in the website and the rebranding, because I think it's just at the core of everything that we're doing. Like, you're already demonstrating how we're trying to communicate better, reach these folks, right? And having an image and a website that's just as accessible is just as important. So just really thankful for your leadership in this arena.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you, guys. Any other questions for me?
Madam President?
Commissioner McKinney.
Just a quick question, Shandy. On the rebranding, I wonder if you could expand on that just a little bit. What is it we're kind of thinking about doing and why?
Sure. President May, Commissioner McKinney. So rebranding, I mean, I will be back here for a full-on workshop with you guys because it's pretty extensive, but a lot of people initially think your colors and your logo. And yeah, that is a big part of it, but we're really taking a holistic approach to rebranding. So essentially it's, to sum it up quickly, because there will be a full workshop on it, it's real, when somebody gets a piece of mail from us, number one, they know immediately looking at it that it's from us. So the design of that, it's quick, that does happen to correlate with the colors and the logo. But then with that, they immediately think ACHG, so then they would think, okay, this is accurate information, this is timely information, I know where I can go for questions. So it's the feeling that goes along with that as well. So if you think of some of the biggest brands in the United States, they each will provoke some sort of feeling from you. So really it's making sure that we're out there in the community and people understand who we are and what we stand for. So that safety is our top priority, that we are always working to get things done as efficiently and effectively as possible, and that it's not just another piece of mail that they're getting, that they throw away because they don't know who it's from because it looks like a realtor or looks different every time that they're getting it. So consistency, that brand recognition. And along with that goes, the website goes seamless with that.
Commissioner Hanson.
If we don't have street or transportation in our name, the thing that highway, why are you called off? Is that an issue you're facing?
I don't know how you step away from Ada County Highway District.
President May, Commissioner Hanson. It's actually something that we've discussed, but I think the biggest thing to realize is that while we do need to, because there's not a strong brand in a lot of areas, there is a strong brand in some. And it would be very confusing to people, I think, at this point if we completely changed the name. I would say everything's on the table, and we are looking at a company that will help us to really explore every option, but it would be, for those that are moving into the community, probably not very hard. For those that have lived here forever, Ada County Highway District, ACHD, very well known. So it's just making sure that they know us for the positive changes that you all have made.
And I just have a question, Steve. Since we were, you know, developed and we came into being as the Ada County Highway District, isn't it a little bit more involved if we're looking at changing the name?
Thank you, Madam President. Commissioners, yeah, that it actually resulted be called the Ada County, but that doesn't mean
Be more inclusive in the logo.
Yeah,
right.
I don't think that it necessarily impacts. I mean, it impacts the name, but I think within a tagline we could say, you know,
yeah, transportation
service, you know, something like that. So,
and the logo could have more than maybe just a road, but
so
yeah.
The desire to try and make it what we provides, but I don't think you can in other ways.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've already thought of that, but I thought we were looking at maybe thinking we were just going to change the name. Yeah.
Name, then, yeah. Oh, I suppose we could try.
Yeah, a little bit more involved. Yeah. You. Any other questions or comments?
I have one comment.
Right. Oh, Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Personally, I understand and appreciate the importance of branding and how we appear to people in their minds and how we roll off their tongue. 30 years ago, it stunned me to find out that I was working for the company in the world that had the most recognizable brand. And it was the Prudential Insurance Company back then, get a piece of the rock. And I never would have ever thought that, except I knew the efforts that they made to brand themselves. It's not that way today at all. I don't know what brands are top in the minds of the world or the United States, but I think that helps our image to be able to be more front of the mind.
Absolutely. Okay, sure. So take a break and then.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Any other questions or comments? No? All right, thank you, Shandy. Tessa, we're gonna take where is she? There she is, at 5:30. So, and then we're gonna come back. So we'll just go ahead and, it's just a couple minutes, we'll go ahead and let Tessa start. Okay, and then, okay, we're just gonna go ahead and take a quick break till 5:30 and we'll do our pre-commission and then we'll circle back around. All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate all the presentations. General practice with other jurisdictions, et cetera. So we thought we would try it and I'm really impressed with all the effort.
Madam President, Commissioners.
Mr. Daigle.
For pre-commission.
Okay, we're ready to go. All right, welcome back to our pre-commission. Director Wong.
Commissioners, do you have any questions on the agenda? Great, I am done with the,
Very much.
turn it back over to our team to continue their presentations.
All right, thank you, Director Wong. Tessa, thank you. Welcome.
Commissioners, expenses and our program as well. Next slide, please. 8 people, which includes our operations team, Grant Pelly, who's with us tonight. Next slide, please. Operations is responsible for the VAMPO program as well as providing assistance to regional park and ride system. Our marketing and outreach team focuses on promoting transportation options with an emphasis on VAMPO promotion through a variety of different employer and commuter outreach programs and services that we offer for our community. As a team, we also help manage the ACHD commute benefit program, which we call BEST, which is really helping to support commute options for the employees here at the district, which is really how we support businesses throughout the community as well. Next slide, please. So at a glance, looking at our fiscal year 23 budget, the proposed budget is a slight increase for our current year's budget, but lower than what was initially adopted for our fiscal year 21 budget. Ultimately, our budget last year was reduced as part of the annual adjustment process to reflect actual expenses. But really, when we look at both this year's budget and next year's budget and compare that to previous year's budget, we really see very similar expenditures across the different budget categories. So minimal differences as we look at the different categories of expenses. Next slide, please. So this past fiscal year, Commuter Ride had a strong year, both from a budget standpoint as well as from a program standpoint. Not only do we start to see VAMPO ridership tick back up, we're not back to where we were pre-pandemic, but we did start to see grow. We launched new employer-sponsored VAMPO routes. We procured new vans. We saw an increase in our grant revenue, providing support to different programs that we offer. And then on the marketing and outreach side, we brought Man Motion back after being away for a year. We launched a new grant program called the Workspace Mobility Grant, providing support to 16 local businesses throughout our community. And we supported a number of different local businesses throughout Ada County and beyond with their commute options programs. We also started to see more people using Share the Ride Idaho to track their smart commutes as part of a program that we manage for the Idaho Transportation Department. In terms of our expenditures, we spent 89% of what we did, which was a total of about $2.2 million, noting that this does include about $560,000 in depreciation estimates for our vans. Our expenditures were lower than previous years, but overall, as I mentioned, very similar in terms of the breakdown of our expenses. Our total expenses are largely influenced by our van pool operations, specifically how many vans we purchase on an annual basis, how many vans we have on route, and then what we are seeing in terms of the fuel prices for that year. This past couple of years, we also saw a reduction in terms of our event and travel expenses, which was largely due to the impact of COVID. But over the years, we've also intentionally reduced our marketing budget and expenses while still maintaining our effectiveness. So just to highlight a few specifics here in terms of our major expenses for this past year, we did purchase 10 new vans, which is in accordance with our annual van replacement schedule. And then on the maintenance and operations side, our largest expense on an annual basis is van fuel. So this past year, that was about $250,000, which was higher than the previous year due to the number of vans that we had on route last year, as well as what we saw in terms of the increase in fuel prices. The van repair costs came in just under $1,000, which is what we have budgeted for this year as well as for next year. We have been able to reduce over the years our van repair and maintenance costs by having a rigorous preventative maintenance schedule in place, as well as following our annual van replacement schedule in order to keep our vans in a state of good repair. This is also contributed to by the fact that our newer vans have an extended warranty in place that's providing lower preventative maintenance costs overall. And then on the marketing and outreach side, we spent about $70,000 on marketing and advertising, which covered our contract that we had last year with Oliver Russell, as well as paid media and advertising expenses. And this is really all combined to support the promotion of our programs and services throughout the community. We spent about $40,000 on incentives, which is largely comprised of incentives that we have for our van pool drivers, as well as commute campaign incentives that we offer, such as Van Motion, Ride-Tober. We also do rider appreciation events to keep our van pool customers happy and active as well. And then the annual cost that we see for the rideshare platform, Share the Ride Idaho, this is $24,500. This is covered fully by Idaho Transportation Department, and this is what we have budgeted for this year as well as next year. And then new this past year, as I mentioned, we launched and implemented the Workspace Mobility Grant. This was funded through AARP, and we were able to provide grants of up to $3,000 to businesses throughout the community to support a variety of different mobility improvements at their workplace. Everything from bike racks to fix-it stands, transit passes, telework amenities, things like that, ultimately to help their employees and their customers with commute options. We do have funding from the city of Boise this year to launch a second round of that program, so we're excited opening that up within the next month. Next slide. So looking into the rest of this year and moving into fiscal year 23, we will continue our focus on opportunities to grow van pool ridership as well as launch new van pool routes, especially as we move hopefully out of the pandemic, targeting different employers as well as communities such as in Canyon County, where we see significant opportunity to expand those transportation options, while also promoting different flexible van pool ridership options in response to commuting patterns throughout the country. So we are also continuing to expand our commuter outreach and education initiatives, such as offering bike commuting workshops, bike safety workshops, commute options workshops, things like that, as well as revamped incentives to really highlight and encourage commuting for our community members. And related to this, one thing we are really excited to begin developing this year is a framework, and we'll be working on this with our partners as well as partner departments within ACHD, a framework to launch what will be a targeted residential outreach program, which we're currently calling Smart Trips Treasure Valley. This is based on a national model that's been implemented in communities throughout the country called Smart Trips, really to focus on key targeted residential areas where there's opportunity to promote transportation options and to build awareness and education of those options. So we are looking to do this, not only develop the framework, but launch the program next year, assuming we're able to secure outside funding for this. We have submitted an application as part of the Compass federal funding allocation process, and just this morning we learned that in the preliminary rankings for those applications that were submitted, there is it's appearing that there's support for this application to move forward. So we're hopeful that that will receive funding from the federal funding process so that we're able to implement that next year. And then in addition, we'll continue to focus on our business outreach, specifically promoting Commuter Ride Works. This is a free consulting service that we offer to our area businesses, basically to help them in developing their commute benefit programs, ultimately to support their employees in their transportation options that they have available to them. And this is really where we see the greatest opportunity in terms of encouraging that transportation shift, is by supporting the employer to then support their employees in those options. And then in addition, included our overarching strategy. So really, these are the principles and the strategies that guide our services and our program at the end of the day. So really focusing on maintaining and improving the safety and efficiency of our operations, focusing on opportunities to expand our existing partnerships and identify new partners in order to fulfill our mission, really looking at our existing programs and thinking about ways that we can increase the equity and inclusivity of how we're doing services, who we're serving, how we're doing that, where we're reaching community members, and then always looking at different opportunities for funding to ensure the operations are stable and we're being fiscally responsible and diversifying our funding sources. Next slide, please. So for the fiscal year 23, our proposed budget is approximately $2.7 million, which again is slightly higher than this year's budget, but generally lower than previous adopted budgets. As I mentioned, this reflects minimal variation across the different expense categories, which is also reflected on the revenue side of our budget. So some years may be slightly higher or slightly lower, but again, this is a reflection of how many vans that we're purchasing, van fuel, number of active vans that we have on route. Just a few things to note here. Salaries and benefits, this comprises about 1/3 of our budget, not including the depreciation on our vans. And then of the remaining budget, about 80% of that is makes up our van pool operations as well as capital expenses. We're planning to purchase 10 vans next year, which is currently budgeted at $450,000, noting that 80% of this we do expect to be recovered through our federal funding grants that we have in place through ITD and or through Valley Regional Transit. We are working with Valley Regional Transit to establish dedicated funding through VRT to support our large urban routes for next year and years moving forward as they continue to develop their transportation development plan and their capital improvement program. Van fuel, we budgeted $300,000. This may need to increase depending on where we see the cost of fuel going for the remainder of this year and next year. Telematics, this has been an essential part of our service. This is basically the GPS units that we have on all of our vans. It allows us to track where they are. It allows us to track the safety of the operations, safety of the drivers, all sorts of things like that. And so this is continuing that service into next year. We've typically budgeted $100,000 for van insurance, but we have not historically needed that amount, and we're hopeful that that trend will continue into the future. Next slide, please. And finally, on the marketing and outreach side, our budget is primarily comprised of professional services and advertising. This covers our marketing contract, which we currently have in place with Stoltz Marketing Group, as well as paid media and sponsorships, collectively supporting the employer and commuter outreach programs that I spoke about previously. So then, in addition to the traditional outreach that we have historically provided, we're really looking at increasing our visibility and conducting additional outreach in areas like Canyon County, where we see more opportunity to grow transportation options and where we see people moving and needing to travel further distances in order to access their place of work due to housing affordability. We'll be focusing more on that in the years to come. And then we've budgeted about $61,000 for van pool and commuter incentives. Again, this is focusing on driver incentives, our van pool rider incentives, as well as different programs that we have in place to foster commute options. What we do know is that incentives and financial incentives especially is one of the best ways to encourage people to utilize other modes of transportation. And with that, I think I will stand for any questions.
Thank you very much, Tessa. Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Back a ways, I don't know which slide it was, you had mentioned that there might be some outreach to folks in their residences.
Correct.
And this is to try and develop some additional routes, I hope.
That's correct. Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, yes, okay. Absolutely. And to promote other transportation options that would be available in those areas as well.
Yeah, one thing that, and COVID kind of kicked this in the butt, so I give plenty of allowance for that. We've had such a big increase in the population in this county, and really our routes have stayed pretty stable. And so I was thinking maybe there's got to be some marketing options, and I don't know if Oliver Russell or anybody else has talked with you about how to get to people. But there's got to be some better ways.
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, absolutely, and we are exploring those different ways. We're looking at creative solutions to reach people where they're at, where they're receiving these messages, and so part of that is certainly paid media and advertising, but also getting back to our roots of connecting directly with residents at events, community events, doing targeted mailers, and then again, really working with the employer to reach commuters through their business.
So using the every door direct mail for the geographic.
Exactly.
Thanks.
Good. Very good. Commissioner Pickering. Okay, good. Tessa, thank you so much for your presentation. I've got several questions for you.
Good.
First, just to build off of Commissioner Goldthorpe's point about, ridership, with the rising costs of our housing crisis that we're experiencing right now, rent eats first, and folks are having to move further and further out from their jobs, which are typically in Boise or wherever, right? So I really applaud that you're going to be trying to look to Canyon County, because unfortunately folks are having to move where it's affordable, but those transportation costs are also increasing. So that's the huge connection. So I think, I think you're right on the money with the employer connection there, because I think we have a tremendous benefit to offer them, even though, because wages aren't keeping up with the cost of housing. So hopefully, I hope that the fruits of your labor are going to come to fruition with that piece in particular, because I really feel that our business community would benefit tremendously from plugging into this program. And so I wanted to ask, with the vans that you're going to be purchasing, there's also some potential federal funding to support electrifying fleets like this. How are you exploring that? Hybrids? What are you thinking for the purchasing of these new vans?
Madam President, Commissioner Pickering, excellent question. That is certainly something that we are monitoring. Our goal would be to incorporate more fuel-efficient vehicles into our fleet as they become available and feasible for our service. So we are certainly looking at hybrid options. That was something that we were looking at potentially purchasing for some of our minivans where they are available. So we would expect to be doing that within the next couple of years. And then as electric vehicles become available for passenger vans, that is something that we'll be looking at as an important part of the sustainability of our program. Certainly as part of that, looking at where electric charging stations are actually work, but again, kind of getting back to whether or not it's feasible for our services. But we're certainly excited about the future of that and seeing where that can go.
That's really exciting. And of course, I really think you're right on the money there. And as it relates to the MIG report, they provided some insight on, because they couldn't come in person, so they couldn't check out our commuter ride parking lots and things like that. And I know that there's also, the city of Boise and a few other partners are looking at, building hubs for that electrification, for charging and things like that. So, I just think keep us in the loop if there's ways that we can incentivize folks to use our commuter ride system and go to the VRT, where we own or lease those parking lots. I think that those connections to charging stations or whatever, which would serve our own fleet if and when we go that route, would be really beneficial. So happy to hear that you're watching all that good stuff.
Thank you.
Very good. All right. Thank you. Commissioner Hanson.
Madam President Tessa, thanks. You're terrific. Whenever someone says, but you're not a transit agency, I say, of course we are. We have commuter ride. Commuter ride is a critical part of ACHD. In fact, has been part of ACHD for what, 35, 40, 50 years? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The question I have is, we just heard a great presentation from Shandy on some expansion. She's finally full staff on communications and outreach. And you seem to have your own set of outreach and communications and advertisement. So where do they meet? Or do we have to keep these so separate? Or question to you and Shandy, how come they're so separate?
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, thank you. Great question. We do work closely with the communications department and take every opportunity that we see to be able to partner with them and increase the efficiency of our services and our outreach. So there are certainly things that we're doing today collectively to market our programs and to support the communications department and to leverage the resources across the departments.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Great presentation, Tessa. Thank you so much for all that you're doing over there. We appreciate all your efforts. All right, next, Andy Miller with our IT update. Welcome. Thank you, Tessa. Welcome, Andy.
Yes, thank you. President May, Commissioners, thank you for an opportunity to share a little insight with what we do in IT. Andy Miller, IT Manager here at ACHD. Today I'll review with you our budget and some initiatives that we're pursuing. We have a dynamic team of 20 people, 3 of those being student interns. Our IT team, we're broken into 4 different subunits, which I'll go into detail with you. Our Geographic Information System, or we just refer to it as GIS, this is a team, they are responsible for building and maintaining map layers such as work zones, bridges, sidewalks. It's a long list of map layers that they are responsible for maintaining the integrity of the data. They also, this GIS system is a bigger system beyond ACHD. We are collaborative with other partnering agencies that also use the GIS system, and we use some of the other partnering agencies' data in with our map layers as well. So the integrity of this data is important to the trust of the projects that we do at ACHD, as well as with our partnering agencies. Network operations, or we just refer to it as NetOps. This is the operating arm of the IT department that keeps the agency's operations running smoothly. The day-to-day taskings of IT and those unpredictable outages or user errors that are being reported falls majorly on this team right here. They're responsible for deploying and replacing hardware equipment, updating and installing software tools for all the members of our agency. We kind of break this team into 2 different units, service desk and infrastructure. Service desk is, think of as assisting all the employees in their work or office environment at their personal desk, their personal cell phones or issued cell phones, laptops, desktops, etc. And then our infrastructure side of the team, these are like the architects of our IT world. They are designing the network infrastructure, getting all of our buildings and facilities to communicate with each other, building the integrations of all the major platforms to transfer and emit information between systems, whether it's user security systems or Active Directory or into the accounting system of Sherwin's team and etc. So that's our infrastructure team. And also within our NetOps is cybersecurity. Jonathan is our cybersecurity specialist. He's been doing an outstanding job. Primarily his role is to mitigate the risks that we are unfortunately prone to in today's world. We are a government agency, so we are constantly targeted. And the cybersecurity aspect of this, we do have tools in place to help mitigate and report to us all of the attacks that we are getting, which are daily. I don't have that data or those stats for you today, but really we got the tools in place to help block with a network firewall infrastructure and lots of other reporting tools at our leisure. But also in cybersecurity, this is how do we remedy if an attacker dig into our infrastructure and our data was compromised. But what are the actions that we need to take in that event? Records management. You can see the pictures, Misty and Katie there. They're the dynamic duo of really the life cycle of our records and data across ACHD. as well as retention levels of our data. How long do we keep the data in place before we archive it or delete the data? So those policies, this team really kind of has oversight of those policies, and well as where eventually does the data live forever or archived and deleted. Web development, or we call them web dev, these are the artistic individuals of our IT team. This team, they get to design what has not existed. Custom software applications, website integrations, customized databases and data sets for our employees to archive their data into. They have designed a plethora of custom tools and applications and databases and integrations that we cannot purchase off the shelf, or the systems out there are just so expensive. It's actually easier for us sometimes to build some tools in-house and maintain them in-house. Looking into our IT budget. In FY21, we executed 94% of our budget with a variance of over $325,000 that we did not spend. The majority was some payroll. We had some vacancies in FY21. Professional services, as well as software subscriptions. In FY21, you guys may recall HR, they hired 116 new employees for ACHD. What that means to IT is that's at least 116 vacancies in our agency that we weren't having to pay for software subscriptions for those vacancies to use. So we do our best to turn off services, whether it's cell phones, email systems, etc. So we are not having to pay for those services, and that's where a lot of the variance came in. We will still need, we are budgeted as if we are fully staffed across the agency. So as HR filling these vacancies and we're getting new team members in ACHD, these costs will go up. Looking back here, so if we compare FY21 to FY22, you'll see our budget decreased. It decreased approximately over $357,000. The main contributor of the decrease was we did a 3-year renewal of Microsoft Cal licensing in FY21. That was a $386,000 purchase for 3 years. So that will come due in FY24. So there was no need for us to budget for that in FY22 or FY23. Comparing FY22 to FY23 budget, again, our budget decreased another $329,000 and some change. The main contributor to that decrease was we purchased, in FY21, we purchased 215 traffic network switches to enable the traffic switches to get to be updated by the users of our ACHD to all the traffic switches and configure the lighting systems. And then FY22, we purchased an additional 50 switches, which actually we didn't have to use the entire budget. So we, in the last budget adjustment, we returned $400,000 back to Christine Tandler to do with the agency as they see fit. So we do not have a need to replace those network switches again right now until those devices come into life. So therefore, we didn't need a budget for that in FY23. Our budget highlights. Looking at telephone utilities, really it's just that our telephone services across all of our facilities and all the desks, phones, and etc. Computer equipment, desktop, laptop replacement, tablet replacement, network switch replacement. The goal for us with desktops, laptops, tablets, we are to replace those every 4 years. So our goal is to replace 25% of that equipment every year. Software subscriptions, these are, think cloud-hosted solutions. A lot more software packages are going to the cloud. The data center infrastructure is being maintained by the contractors or the vendors that we partner with. And this is the budget for those renewal subscriptions year and year after. Lease and rentals, these are the copiers and printers across all the facilities. Maintenance repair, this is our budget to maintain our data centers that reside on our premise. So again, repair and maintenance on high-end servers, network and data switches, etc. Initiatives. We are looking to hire Active Directory and a Microsoft 365 system administrator. This is not a new FTE. So we had a vacancy in our database administrator role, and we have determined that our major need, critical need more immediately, is an employee on our team that can manage our Active Directory and our Microsoft 365 system, because it is a fast growing tool. It's a suite of tools that is fastly growing, and it's becoming more complicated for us to maintain that when there's not someone dedicated to that system full time. PCI compliancy, this is payment card industry. Think Visa, MasterCard, Discover Card, American Express. Commuter Ride, they are taking credit card payments from the public for like their rideshare services or the services that they provide. The payment card industry, those big players I mentioned, they have a set of rules or guidelines, policies, that as a merchant that is taking credit card data from our customers, we have to follow within these guidelines to ensure the integrity of that data will not maliciously be used. Stolen credit cards. So we recently we went through an audit, and we have some weak areas. To become fully compliant with PCI, we have engaged with a contractor to help us get there and how to mitigate our weaknesses and overcome those. So we have already engaged in that, and Jonathan, our cybersecurity specialist, is project lead on that. Upgrade auditorium system, since the event of COVID and moving from the dais down to the work centers and back, and so we do have some budget in there, and we have been actively doing demos. We have brought Shandy in on that shopping process with us and research process, as we do want her input from a customer or another outside of an IT perspective of how do we overcome the challenges of this auditorium room.
You're doing a great job with it.
Thank you. Ticket tracking system. So this is an IT initiative. We have a ticket tracking system right now. My opinion, professional opinion, it is entry level. Our team has outgrown it. Our agency has outgrown our existing ticket tracking system. It is lacking the ability to effectively and efficiently delegate IT issues to the respective members of IT all the way to resolution. Tracking the timeline that's taken us to resolve these issues, as well as tracking projects and all the way to the finish of that project and marking it as completed. IT asset management system, again, another IT initiative for in-house of IT. Right now, our ability to track assets out in the field across all of our facilities, we are merely working off something similar like an Excel spreadsheet. There are advanced tools out there that can take us to the new level of tracking laptops, desktops, what operating systems are out there, what are making our network infrastructure vulnerable, so that way we can mitigate a plan of what to attack and what to replace rapidly to reduce those vulnerabilities in our network. And another initiative that we're looking at is a software deployment tool. The ability for IT to quickly push software and updates to all computers agency-wide. That way our staff isn't needing to meet up with the employee in, let's say, Dev and Tech Services and scheduling that timeline. We can just push it more rapidly. And we're also looking to standardize laptop deployments. This is, instead of the standard of desktops being a standard, let's move to laptops. We've learned from COVID, and also in the event we are in a floodplain, if we got to pick up and go, let's enable our employees across ACHG to be able to do just that, rather than waiting on IT to deploy a bunch of laptops. It's taking IT to their knees during that period, And it's also slowing down the efficiencies of our employees outside of IT to execute their mission that they need to while they're waiting on IT. The technology is here. We can implement laptops that are quite powerful, and there will be some certain scenarios where someone can justify that they need a powerful desktop, and we will work with our users on that.
Very good.
And with that, I stand for questions.
Well, thank you very much. This was very informative. Really appreciate the insight and the overview you've provided for us. Commissioners, any questions?
Oh, appreciation, because we deal with the public all the time, and so the balance between securing and protecting all the information systems we have, but also being able to be accessible in ways, you know, that they fully expect, because everything else in the world is accessible, and they want to know what's happening in their neighborhood. They want to be able to find out right away, and I really appreciate particularly the technology that's been incorporated into the integrated 5-year work plan mapping that has been very helpful in helping people understand what's going on and when. So it's been very good balance.
Thank you.
Madam President,
Very good. Commissioner Pickering.
I just also want to applaud you for working with Shandy on the auditorium system, because, you know, I think you all are such experts in your field, and you know, oh, these are some of the benefits of this program versus this, or this might cost a little less and it'll be fine. But sometimes then that means that, you know, the public can't hear us, or we can't interact with the public. And so and that type of cross-department collaboration isn't always inherent, especially with IT. So I just really want to applaud you for that, and just keep pushing forward on those pieces, because especially with the website and all of those elements, having somebody that knows the challenges of accessing everything ACHD from a public lens is going to be really critical in making sure that we design infrastructure in place that they can do that. So major kudos to you.
Yeah, thank you, President May, Commissioner Pickering. So some initiatives that we would like to move in that direction, just on that topic, is, like, I think it came up with, maybe it was Shandy and Sherry, they alluded to some technology investments that they would like to do. I think the question was posed, is that IT's budget or is that your budget, right?
Right.
IT, with a lot of these systems that are in our budget, we aren't necessarily users of those systems. We don't know how to use it. We might know how to quickly get it resolved and working again, but we don't know how to use it. And so therefore, we are not the ones that should be solely shopping for these solutions. So what will happen is, such as like a new HR management system that Sherry is shopping for right now, she will be the product owner of it, and IT will be there to assist in that shopping. What is most compatible with our technology ecosystem? And we will assist and consult Sherry on that as a team for ACHD of what is the right solution. And then, of course, then that will likely fall into IT's budget moving forward.
Provide that expertise.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Goldberg? No?
No, I would have just tried to be funny. I know that Jonathan constantly sends me strange emails to see if I'll fall prey to, yeah. So I'm just wondering if he does that to the rest of the commission. And if so, who's the biggest sucker for a bad email?
We'll consider that classified information.
Okay.
Oh, thank you very much. We appreciate it. So commissioners, we're going to just stay down here for the rest of the meeting. Our sound system's working great, so no need to move up there.
Madam President, just in terms of IT, I wanted to give you a little department and why it's so important. See that under Idaho official map, and all of that is recorded through the pull up any piece of property. We can figure out what the steps, our ownership of the public right of way.
Anytime.
And to have that detail department and all of our departments rely upon, that's not an easy task, and they do a great job.
That's huge. Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it. Take a little bit of a break. Are we going to take a break, or do you want to just keep going?
I do.
All right. All right, so we'll just welcome everybody to our commission meeting. If you would please join us, we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you very much. Our first item on the agenda, or first item for this evening, is to approve our agenda.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, next, consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine or acted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a commissioner or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. All consent agenda items are commission action items unless noted. Is there a motion?
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney.
I would like to move that we approve the consent agenda as presented and also add the comment, thanks for the additional information that was provided on item number 3.
Very good. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Yes, second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Now on to our regular agenda. We have one item only. As you can see, the contest results have been moved to March 9th as they're still judging entries. So we will have Christine Tandler. We will go over the FY22 first budget adjustments. This is a request for approval. Welcome, Christine.
Bingo.
Good evening, Madam President, Commissioners. For the record, Christine Tandler, Budget Manager at the Highway District. I'm here to present to you a request for approval for the first budget adjustments for FY22. We began the fiscal year with a budget of $150.6 million. This revenue, $34 million, cash reserve utilization, as well as quarter preservation, rescheduled projects, and the commuter ride budget of $2.6 million. We did record $4.3 million related to encumbrances from FY21. That's the same number that was reported in the financial statements. We show some one-time adjustments, chosen to not do an equipment disposal this year. Going to do a full review and determine potentially move to U-Stick, and then with the addition of the fleet manager position on, that will be one of their first tasks. We also have seen an increase in vacation fees. This is one that's a pretty tough one to budget for. There's typically budget for these because it fluctuates so much in which applications come forward. On the project-related adjustment, by just under $1,000, a bulk of that expense side is the agreement with the city for lender committed to funding that design as a revenue and as an expense neutral on that side. We do have a decrease in federal aid project revenue that are going to be spent in F2, whichever year we're in. And then you'll see those 23 also. The thing with federal aid projects is, and we receive the 92.66 revenue back, and for the construction project, 3-4%. I didn't come up with that idea. We are showing a cash about $2.4 million. As we go through the expenditure requests, you will see those lined out. There was a commuter ride revenue budget adjustment of $5,000, fairly minute in this, with the total proposed revenue of $157.8 million. The original expenditure budget, again, we were balanced at $150.6 million on the encumbrance, nearly $2 million, just over $2 million, and we're showing a balanced budget at $157.8 million there. I'll go into more detail in the following slides. So, original operational budget was $670 million. We have about the $2 million FY21. I've lined out some several adjustments below that I'll go over really quickly. As has been stated several times, the savings on our work resulted in a reduction of that budget of $402,000. When budgeting for salary, because we don't know what that rate's, we typically don't get the bill from the state insurance fund until that true up this time. And also one of the benefits that the commission approved last year was the 2% match for the 401k. This is a $347,000 adjustment that was not in the original budget. We'll work to get it in future adjustments. With it being a new program, we've still seen people trickling in, signing up for that program. In the planning side, there are additional neighborhood plans related to some additional commission direction, as well as the prioritization support for that effort, through the integrated 5-year plan. Under the design budget, we have we are now doing utility locations within that, so we are seeing dig line fees come out of there. They do some internal bridge designs for some of our smaller structures, culverts and the like, as well as work on irrigation repairs. These ones are specifically for Bel Air and Jefferson. And then previously as seen, we are fully phasing out all of our nuclear density gauges, and so this additional $60,000 will cover the additional cost of those, and then we will be able to transition out of that. As Andy mentioned, there was he was giving up some additional IT because we were able to purchase a significant number of the traffic. So the other thing that are in there is increases in software subscriptions paid, as well as the budget software that wasn't purchased until FY20. On the maintenance side, we did have a replacement of the small asphalt paver that was unanticipated, as well as the mini sweeper that was directed by the commission. The pipe crossing repairs by our maintenance crew, they with our design team to find those pipes, typically metal pipes that are failing out in the valley, and are able to repair. They've had significant emergency ones to, as well as the ones they already have scheduled. Get all the ones that we know of done in a timely manner, and then we can just be a little rather than constantly behind. Again, with the snowfall, magnesium chloride, and then the additional FTEs been approved. We need additional vehicles, as well as orders related to the fire suppression installation, which I believe that project's. And then we have miscellaneous operational adjustments, pluses and minuses of $5,000 or $10,000, which can be in school or in school supplies. I don't even have a child in school. Which can be in office supply, some professional services. Excuse me. Capital side, we did budget just under $75 million, and the $2.4 million related. We are seeing an increase for traffic material, specifically for a CCDC on Grove Street, as well as an increase in. It can increase, it's nearly 100, the current budget. the concept study first, the scope of that did change, so we do increase in the concept design there. And the lender Franklin from the city of Meridian. You can see based on bids and based from the construction side, Chinden Star Road. Have we brought it to the commission yet? Yeah? No? The Chinden and Star Road, they approved that yet? No, but the. Oh my God. Okay, so you guys have seen, I just didn't want you guys have seen and then. So that was originally programmed in FY23 that we're now paying this year. And then with the downtown Boise implementation, this is in order to coordinate with some additional able to work together through that process. Required by statute of $157.8 million. And I will recommend approval of the 22 first budget adjustments as outlined in the staff report.
All right, thank you very much, Christine. Commissioners, any comments or questions? Commissioner Goldthorpe.
I have a question. Back on the one entry, you don't have to go back where it talked about a mini sweeper.
Mm-hmm.
Was that for one sweeper or more than one? One. Wow. Okay. I was hoping that I could stump you because that contest is still ongoing, right?
Best of luck.
Madam President?
McKinney?
Christine, just a quick question. In various places, we had encumbrances from fiscal year 21. Just clarify what we're talking about when we're referring to encumbrances. That's over budget items from 21. Is that what we're talking about?
Well, an encumbrance is the budget was originally completed in FY20. A significant amount, and then related to schedule adopted, we found out we're not going to get funding from 1 year to it's shown as it's a recording of the liability money on these items. They just didn't get, it's just a timing on it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very good. Thank you. Did you have a question?
Oh, Mr. Goldthorpe read my mind. I was getting the exact same question and wonder whether
okay.
when we see the next budget, we might find some mini sweepers with a few less bells and whistles that just sweeps. I was impressed with the curling team, how quickly and efficiently.
I like that, yeah.
So surely a sweeper.
Got some good ideas there. Yeah.
Sweeper for a fairly small space shouldn't cost that much.
Very good. All right, well, this is before us for approval. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the budget adjustments.
Second that.
All right, we have a motion. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Christine. All right, public communications. Ms. Spencer, is there anyone to?
No, we do not.
For us to listen to. All right. Seeing none, then we are adjourned. Thank you very much. Oh.